Welcome to Generator, your view into the ever-evolving and vibrant art scene in Ireland today. In this, our first episode, we feature illustrator and printmaker Tom Moore, one of 6 artists from the Generator Group exhibition. We visit the joinery in Arbor Hill, Dublin, to have a chat with Miranda Driscoll and Will Joyce about the ins and outs of running a creative art space. First up, we talk to artist, inventor and lecturer Seán Hillen about his work, his inspirations and his views on the creative process.
Well, I'm Seán Hillen. Here I am in my little world, and I'm an artist. I've always been an artist, I think. I think I saw when Anthony Quinn as Van Gogh in Lust for Life. I thought, fucking hell, wouldn't mind doing that. That would be a laugh. I suppose I needed to have a voice in the world, you know, because growing up in what my father called a shooting match, and quite angry and wanted to fix the world or something. So I ended up as an artist. My process happened sort of by accident, I think. Like there are a couple of old cameras here that belonged to my granddad. And, I like machines and things. And so I ended up playing with cameras and got addicted to photography as a teenager. I think it was, a hobby, kind of, but I was quickly addicted. And I took a lot of photos, that I've just got collected now by the National Library and published. But when I went to art schools in London, I had these photos and I was making them, but nobody wanted to see more photos of the North because there was this Sunday supplement culture. And the best photographers in the world had done it. Like once Gilles Perez and McCullen have kind of done the subject. There's not much to add to it, you'd think. And nobody wanted to see them anyway, so I started fiddling with them and adding little bits to them. And I suddenly realised that I could make them a lot more interesting and somehow truer in a funny way, because I think reality is very complicated and multiple. And I could also make points with them, all of this at the same time. So I got addicted to photomontage then, and that became my life's work, and that's what I do. So, but if I have a secret, it's that I don't know what I'm going to make, for better or worse. So my working technique is to hoard material. There are probably thousands of bits of paper here. And I start work late at night as well. And I have very boring work is cutting lots and lots of little fragments to the point where they're sort of usable. And sometimes making likely cuts and things. You'll see some of the collages, and you see them, there'll be cuts that aren't used. And then I start work late at night and I play with them. And the fairies either come out or they don't. And the stories form. And I let the picture lead me. So I need a subject roughly and a title. And then I follow the picture where it's going to go. I think anyway, there's one collage, an Atlantis one, called Viewing the Ice Flows from the Cliffs of Moher. And I had the idea conceived before I made it. And so for that reason, I actually don't like it so much. And I find it as less intellectual life about it. So, I'm really lucky that, when Atlantis is in a show, I can get in a cab and the taxi driver will like it. He'll have seen it somewhere and he'll like it. And our intellectuals like it. Finton would write about the work, and they're on 30-something book covers and that kind of things. There's several papers about Atlantis. And I love that. Well, the absence of Photoshop kind of defines my work in the fact that, because it's not Photoshop, it's very different. because you can't, like I can't decide I'm going to make a picture of a whale in the Liffey today because I need a whale the right size as the fucking Liffey, you know, it doesn't work like that. But that's a joy to me, because with Photoshop, anything you can think of and more or less anything you couldn't think of, you can make a picture of. Whereas with collage, you have to work with, you have to run with what you've got. And I like the difficulty and I like the kind of game of it, you know. So it's like Seamus Heaney said, he opened the first Atlantis show. He said he admired them so much he wanted to sign SH under each one, but somebody done it already. But he said he loved the technique of them. He said it was so good that you don't notice it. He said it's like getting in with a bad driver. You only notice it when it's not there, which is very clever. You know, like we were in Uri, it's like 3 miles north of the border, but we could only get RTE very fuzzy. So I grew up with British television, and in Blue Peter in particular, you know, it's the longest running children's programme in the world. And they had a thing where like twice a year at Christmas anyway, they would have like a propaganda thing for the British Army, where the Horse Guards or the band of the Royal Marines would come in and parade around the studio. And you'd go out and the same guys were following you down the road in their sights and shot teenagers, you know, 2 streets away, you know, were never prosecuted. So you realise there were these different interpretations of the world and different ideas about the world, and that a place could be 2 places at once. And there could be an us and a them as well, but I might be the them. So, and like I wanted to be James Bond for a while, and then I wanted to take on the whole British Army on my own. So I grew up with a rather complicated view of the world, which I think is a gift in lots of ways. And you also learn that governments lie routinely. So, as Oscar said, the pure and simple truth is never pure and rarely simple. I discovered a philosopher, writer called Robert Anton Wilson, a New Yorker, one of the great minds, I think, of the last century. And I moved to Dublin because I thought he was still living here, but he had just left. He was a Joyce fiend, and a fascinating mind, very complicated mind. And of course, you know, from the Leary and McKenna generation, a Beat generation who believed in, you know, it could be altering your mind for fun and profit, as he used to put it. And this stuff from Alfred Korzybski, the idea that of the reality tunnel, that we all live in a reality tunnel. And that you can't really, I mean, the 9/11 truth stuff is like that most people can't imagine that anybody could be so ruthless and manipulative as to lie in such a big way, or so evil as to do such things. Whereas there are psychopaths. In fact, 1 in 20 people is either born or made a psychopath, it seems. And that means they're often very intelligent, very charming. I've known one personally, and that's how I learned about it. And they're very nice to people close to them, but they can be utterly ruthless when it comes to their own aims. So Thatcher is a classic one. She was very, very nice to the people who worked around her, very charming, very intelligent, but she would sink a boat with 400 people on it to get the headlines and to get re-elected, completely ruthlessly. And unfortunately, these people rise to the top in organisations, particularly in government, particularly in the media, particularly in the military, because their ruthlessness is an asset. I ended up luckily corresponding for a while with Robert Anton Wilson, which was really fascinating. But the 3 brain theory says that, you know, humans, we think of ourselves as these godlike creatures, which we are, and that we have all this language. It's a problem that intellectuals have, is that they think they know about the world. And, you know, the smarter you are and the more you know, the greater the danger that you think you actually know what the fuck is going on. Whereas Wilson said, if you think you know what's going on, you're probably full of shit. So the 3 brain theory, it's actually the work of an anthropologist and a biologist. And it suggests that at the top of our spinal column is basically a thing that's about the size of your fist, and that's the midbrain, I think they call it. And it's really just an extension. In fact, we know now that a lot of our processes, our thinking, goes on in the fucking spinal column. It doesn't even get up as far as the brain. And that's basically equivalent to the brain of a lizard or a bird or something. And a lizard, like, you know, we all can imagine what the lizard thinks. It's like, eat, fuck, shit, bite that thing if it moves, you know. There's not a lot going on there. And around that is another structure, which is very like the brain of a mammal, like a dog or horse. And like we know what a dog is like. Or, Cats are a bit more mysterious. I think they're fucking aliens or something. But dogs are, basically they have an emotional life, and that's what their intellectual life is, basically feelings. And so they're quite easy to manage once you know that. So, but there's no higher cognition going on. There's no symbol making going on there. They can have complex feelings, but they're basically feelings. And then we have the grey matter, which is this convoluted gunk. And that's where all the symbolic stuff goes on, and that's where we form fucking religions and ideologies, and also where science goes on and technology. And so we can control all this stuff, and we think we know about it. But as Wilson says, when you lie on the couch, you speak for the lizard and the horse as well. The best advice, well, Joyce said, wipe your glasses with what you know. You must do what you know. You must use what you have. And I think you should tell the truth. But you might get punished for it. But I think we need to change things. I think I'm sick of work that says nothing. I think there is redeeming beauty in beauty. There's redeeming power in beauty. Like sheer beauty is enough in itself. But not for me. My work has to say something for me to feel it worthwhile.
I'm Will Joyce. I work on the music program here. I used to do some gigs years ago, and then I went to college and did arts management. And then when I was finished that, the joiner were looking for someone to help out with the music program. So I started here about 2 years ago, and been here since.
My name is Miranda Driscoll. I run the joinery. I set it up along with Fergal Ward in 2008, early 2008, I think. Yeah, my background is photography. I'm a photographer, so I went to art college and I studied photography, but I never run an art space before or worked in a gallery. So, to be honest, the place, I mean, we might have chatted about this before, but the place kind of started in a very kind of ad hoc way, in the sense that it wasn't really planned. It was more, Fergal and I were looking for a kind of place to work from, that we might work with other people in a space. So that was kind of it. And then, to be honest, when people ask this question, I usually just say that it was actually the building that kind of dictated what the joinery has become. It was empty for about 3 years before us, but I guess we started pre-recession, in the sense that it wasn't one of those empty buildings. It was actually quite unusual that this building had been empty for 3 years, and it was a joinery, hence the name. We couldn't think beyond that. But it was used. It was always used as a workshop, kind of for joinery. So when we kind of took the building, it was pretty rough. I mean, it's still rough, but this is fancy compared to what it was once upon a time. And we had to do a lot of work. Like, we did about 3 months of kind of renovations, and we had a friend who's a builder who really kind of helped us out with that. I suppose firstly we like to see kind of a connection between the visual art and the music, that there is a kind of correlation between the two, and there's not one over here and one over there. So like there's a lot more music events on than there are other things, and I suppose it's just because they're sort of one-off things, and exhibitions tend to last a bit longer. But I would say, like, recently in the last year or two, the gallery is very much influenced by the what goes on in the backspace, which is the music. So if I were to kind of sum it up, I'd say that we're interested in kind of performance and events, and some of those events could be kind of 3 or 4 days, or could be an exhibition, but mostly it's performance-based stuff, events, talks, screenings, and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of heavily influenced by the nature of sort of improvisation and that kind of thing.
I mean, that's something that we look for when we're planning the music, is something that's kind of has an element of improvisation or experimentation, and added to would it suit the venue downstairs, and how well it will work. Like, I mean, we are trying to cross over more between the gallery, and we had that talk with a few sound artists and a visual artist about improvisation and the nature, and had that in the gallery as opposed to in the performance space, and while they were improvising with electronics and acoustics, and I think something like that we're very interested in, as opposed to just putting on a regular gig.
Yeah. The kind of fine line between the two things, I suppose, isn't it? Sound, art and music.
I mean, there's other events we put on, like the radio listening night, which is, again, it is kind of somewhat improvised as well, because you might not, there's part of it is people, submit bits of radio documentaries that they want to listen to, and it might be a whole mix of different things on the night, and everyone sits down as a group and listens to it and discusses it. And while we don't really do that with music, but it's something that we could be incorporated into that as well.
Yeah, I suppose it takes quite a long time to realise kind of what you are, because the years go by and you're just doing stuff all the time, and then you have to kind of reflect every now and again, and I suppose I'm more confident now to say what it is we do and what we're kind of interested in, and like collaboration is a big thing, that kind of experimentation slash improvisation, so that open to things not working out, not being kind of final and completed, that there's an openness there that things can fail as well. And then the other thing is kind of public and community, so audience, like what an audience is, and that might be like the idea of the radio listening thing that Will was talking about. It's kind of unusual to sit down in a room with a bunch of people and not watch something. You're actually sitting there kind of listening together, and it does give a sense of kind of a community kind of activity of people doing something together.
Nachts 2 Uhr.
At 2 in the morning, the first copper ingot is fed into a furnace,
Und dann immer runter.
and more go down that flaming belly,
Mit dem Zinn zusammen
together with the tin. 7,500 weight,
die Glockenspeise.
bell metal, bronze.
Es ist soweit.
The moment's arrived.
Die rote Suppe
The red
kommt jetzt
fruit is turned yellowish white,
1120.
1120 degrees.
16 Glocken.
16 bells will be cast this morning.
We've kind of got sporadic Arts Council funding over the years, bits and pieces here and there. It's really unreliable, and we just hit we didn't get it the last couple of years, and I think we were kind of holding out to get it this time, and we didn't. So it was kind of a shock, and we had kind of an emergency situation in which we would have closed down if we didn't do something. So we decided to do the funded thing, and I guess it was a kind of a risk because it was quite a lot of money, wasn't it, to ask for?
I think we were really happy, really surprised by the response. Like, I mean, it just showed, like, it just felt like we have a much bigger audience than we thought we did. Like, because you might be some shows where there's only 20 people here, like, but yeah, people really got behind it, and I think it was because there was a real consequence. Like, we would have closed. Like, there was no way of getting around that. If we didn't have the money for the year, we would have closed. And it's given us a lot of space to look at new ways of doing things. And I think definitely, you know, philanthropy is going to have to play a big part in the future of spaces like this.
Tom Moore. I studied printmaking in NCAD. I'm an illustrator and printmaker working in Blackchurch Print Studio. I have a huge interest in animation, and I work with digital furnace games, making art assets and concept art. I mean, generally I start with a drawing. It can be in a notebook or on a scrap of paper. And often recently I've been going to digital straight away, just because it's so much easier to play with the idea. And also I really like the idea of automatic drawing, that you don't have an idea before you start and you just kind of let the drawing kind of take its course, and then kind of let chance almost. And I always find that was way more satisfying than kind of having an idea and sitting down to actually do something, because transferring from what's inside your head to on the page, it can sometimes be a bit disappointing. Whereas the discovery of drawing, sort of like happy accidents, I think, is much more appealing. Yeah. And then from there, you know, if it's something that I'm happy with, I'll work it up into something a lot more finished. It's always been about drawing, you know, as I said, and I wouldn't necessarily say it is illustration for me. I think illustration is a funny term, because it's similar to art. It's like a weird catch-all, because there's so many different facets of illustration, that kind of finding where you fit into that can be a little bit bewildering. So I guess it's just drawing, and there are different techniques and processes for that. You know, working as a printmaker as well, there's etching, there's lithography, there's screen printing, there's digital, there's photography, there's animation. There's just so many different things that you can tackle within the spectrum of illustration, I guess, that I just find that so appealing and so fun, that, yeah, I really love it. Somebody said that to me when I was in Ballyfermot years and years ago. They said that they'd be able to recognise something that I'd done just by looking at it without knowing that I'd done it. And I didn't know how I felt about that. You know, I always wanted to be somebody that could turn his hand to anything. And I kind of still do. On the flip side of that, you know, if you want to work as a commercial illustrator, I mean, from a lot more experienced commercial illustrators, or illustrators in general, I think will tell you that having a recognizable style is almost a must-have, because it's what art directors look to. They commission you for your style. They want to know that you'll be able to deliver what they've asked for in the style that they have come to you for. So there's that as well, but I think, you know, when it comes to your own work, your personal work, what you do to maybe express whatever you're trying to express, I think it's fine to branch out. It's funny as well, then I saw Oliver Jeffers talk a couple of months ago, and he said the exact same thing, that he was in college and somebody said to him that they would recognise his style immediately, and he had the same reaction, kind of, he wasn't sure if he liked it or not. When I started working on the book, the iPad was a relatively new thing. I mean, it wasn't brand new, but I kind of saw it, and I thought that would be cool to have a kids book on. And not long after that, I then saw this book called The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore, which was drawn by somebody who used to work for, or still works for, Pixar. I can't remember his name, but it was really good. It just involved so many different elements. It seemed like such an easy route to get the book out there and into people's hands. I could produce it digitally and then publish it digitally, be it on people's tablets as a downloadable PDF. I haven't actually figured out what I'm going to do yet, but the possibilities are pretty exciting in terms of animation, in terms of sound, incorporating that stuff into the book. Well, I think, as I said before, there are so many facets to art, and there's so many avenues that you can take with art and being creative, kind of. And I also think that as kind of budgets have been cut and funding has been cut, I think art has gotten better the less money there is available, but it has, for me. And that's as a viewer. I mean, kind of making art, I think the internet is such a fantastic platform for discovering other artists, for being an artist and making your work available for other people to see. There's so many different platforms, avenues, I don't know what you call it, ways to get your work in front of people's eyeballs. The internet is fantastic. I've got a particular piece of advice that I really want to share, because I was working here maybe a year ago, and I was grinding down copper plates to reuse them with a drill. And the one time I wasn't wearing goggles, a tiny little piece of dust went lodged up here. I don't know if it lodged, but my eye has been irritated ever since. Yeah, goggles, wear 'em.